In this video, I will explain if Western astrology is indeed wrong, or is it right? Hello everyone, this is Simona Rich from Rising Moon Astrology. If Western astrology is wrong, it means that, firstly, there should be no evidence of correct predictions, especially regular predictions by the same Western astrologers. Secondly, Western natal charts would not depict correctly the character features and describe the lives of natives. In this video, we will deal with the first addressed issue. I picked 4 Western astrologers who not only made correct predictions with traditional Western astrology, but also with modern Western astrology. But first, let's start with Western astrologers practicing traditional tropical astrology. The first Western astrologer I want to discuss and whom I respect immensely was William Lilly, living in the 17th century. William Lilly was a master astrologer whose detailed works about astrology are still available for us today. His services were sought after by kings and also by those who were completely poor. He didn't turn down anyone from his services. He rose from nobody to a celebrity status because of his regular publishing of pamphlets with correct astrological predictions. Through tropical astrology, he made numerous correct predictions that were chronicled. One of his most famous predictions was the Great Fire of London that happened 15 years after his prediction. He predicted this in his book, Monarchy or No Monarchy of England, published in 1651. He also included 2 illustrations of this event. When his prediction came true, it was so accurate that he was even arrested because he was suspected of setting London afire himself to prove how accurate his predictions were. Of course, he was acquitted later on because he claimed not to have known the exact year of this event. However, he did know it. And how do we know that? Because he encoded the actual astrological chart in one of his drawings. In this following drawing, he encoded even the exact hour of the start of this event. In this cryptic image, each human stands for a specific planet, and through symbols you can work out in which sign that planet was located. You can also see that the sign Gemini, presented by twins, is hanging upside down, being burned by the fire. In the fire, we can see 5 logs making up a Roman numeral, which, when arranged in the right order, is actually the degree of the ascendant of London, which is Gemini. That's why it's seen as burning. Since it's upside down, this is a sign for us to turn it the right way. So what we get is the midheaven in Gemini, 14 degrees. And how do we know that it's actually a chart? Because you can see that the natal chart is included in the very left side of the image. How genius is that? Just this event was huge. It was one of a kind because the whole London was burning for 3 days. The same event was predicted by another astrologer, a very famous one, Western astrologer, which was Nostradamus, about whom we will talk later on. In the same book, he also predicted the Great Plague of London, which happened in 1665 till 1666. In the same book, he also predicted the correct outcome of the Civil War of England. Lilly was consulted by kings for critical battle decisions, and so was John Dee, the astrologer I will talk about later. And I believe because of the power of these incredibly talented Western astrologers that England became such a powerful empire. Lilly also correctly predicted the execution of King Charles I, and he would correctly predict anything that you would ask him. That's why day after day there were lines of people waiting for him to answer their questions. He would give correct answers about when the person should be marrying, whether the person selected the right partner to marry, whether people will recover from diseases, when is the time that they will die, what are the dangers, where are the missing things, whether the person is alive or dead. He knew everything from the map of the stars, and he used tropical astrology. John Dee was another English astrologer living in the 16th and 17th centuries. He was a very mysterious figure who helped a great deal for the expansion of England. He was an astronomer, alchemist, astrologer. He was the master of mathematics. He was genius. Though I in no way support the expansion of England, he did cause its expansion because of his prophecy that England will only succeed if they will have a permanent navy. John Dee is actually a Western astrologer that helped to shape the world the way that it is now. Queen Elizabeth inherited a tiny country that was totally weak and powerless, which was England. People sometimes were starving there, not having anything to eat because they never traded with other countries but grew their own food. And when they had food shortages because of bad weather destroying the crops, people had to eat grass and tree barks to survive. Now look at England now. This is very much caused by the astrologer John Dee. Elizabeth I used John Dee in deciding the date of her coronation, and this date proved to be correct because she was known for the most successful reign in the history of England. He also predicted that she would live a long life, which proved to be true. Before the reign of Elizabeth I, John Dee wrote to her predicting the end of the reign of Queen Mary Tudor I. He also correctly predicted the Spanish conquest of England in 1592. I'm sure there were many accurate tropical astrologers of his day, but we know only the most famous ones of that time. For example, Henry VI executed two of his astrologers because they predicted a violent end for him, which actually proved to be the case. It's important to understand that astrology at that time was attacked from all sides, especially the Christian one, and you could easily lose your life for correct predictions. So some of the astrologers were quite vague in their predictions, not giving years but describing what would happen for the fear of losing their lives. And that's very obvious in the writings of the astrologer that I'm going to discuss next, which is Nostradamus. Nostradamus gained fame when his astrological predictions started coming true. This opened a door for him to royal clients who sought his services for their personal lives, for the lives of their children, and for world events. He was told to have predicted the death of King Henry II of France. He predicted the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon, the rise of Hitler, and he also predicted the Great Fire of London. His book on prophecies, which continues being reprinted even to this day, contains mystical verses predicting the future. And although I do agree that some verses are too general to really understand whether they represent any kind of event, some verses are specific enough so that you really understand what he's talking about. He clearly wrote about the Great Fire of London. That is very obvious. Here's the verse: "The blood of the just will be lacking in London, burnt up in the fire of 66. The ancient lady will topple from her high place. Many of the same sect will be killed." Now let's move on to a more modern astrologer, Evangeline Adams. She lived in the 20th century and correctly predicted the stock market crash of 1929, the First and Second World Wars, and even her own death. It is chronicled that she predicted the First World War And in her book Astrology for Everyone, released in 1931, she predicted USA entering the war in 1942. Finally, here are a few more considerations. The reason Vedic astrologers think that tropical astrology doesn't work for predictions is because now most Western astrologers do not practice prediction. They don't even study predictive techniques that are available from old books of astrology. And that's because the demand for predictions is not there. People in the West are more interested in their psychological development, how to improve their career and relationships, rather than knowing the dates of when they would get married or the number of children that they would have. So if there's no demand for predictions, obviously astrologers will move on to studying techniques that are relevant for the people that they serve. And also it's important to understand that even though Vedic astrologers say that they make correct predictions, very few do, and you can figure that out by reading the feedback of people who use their services. And I'm not saying at all that Vedic astrology is incorrect. It is correct, just like tropical astrology is, but both are the tools. And if you really want to make correct predictions, you must study a lot. You must master astrology. The reason I got into Western astrology is because it was more correct. The reading of my chart was more correct from Western astrologers than from Vedic. According to Vedic astrology, which I got a reading for 10 years ago, I should have been very poor, not having anything long time before this point. However, after I got that reading, I continued as I was, and I actually ended up accumulating more possessions and wealth, which enabled me to buy a land, and then I upgraded to a bigger land, and now I live in my farm, which is very large, and I have a nice house. So it's not correct, whilst Western astrology proved to be totally correct. So please do not think that Western astrology is not right. If it wouldn't be right, people would not be studying it. I wouldn't have gotten into it. I became an astrologer, a Western astrologer, because my chart proved to be absolutely accurate. I have regular clients because I accurately described what they were going through and their character features. I do wish more Western astrologers would study predictive techniques to prove that Western astrology is right. However, this is not the case. And another thing about predictions is that it's dangerous for some Vedic astrologers just to make such quick predictions of people's lives going wrong, because this could actually act as a subconscious suggestion, ruining their lives. So in Western astrology, when we make predictions, if we see that something bad is going to happen, we will look for each significator of that particular combination to understand how the person can get out of that situation and offer them a way out, rather than saying that his life would be horrible and leaving it at that. So please understand both systems, Vedic and tropical, are right, but in order to make correct predictions, in order to be master astrologer, you must continuously study, because astrology is a huge subject and there are very few astrologers that are masters. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to check out this video if you want to understand how Western astrology works and what is the difference between Western and Vedic astrology systems. See you in the next video.